Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remarks by Councilmember Palermo.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. Go ahead and have a seat. So I can use my microphone here. Thanks, Mr. President. Again, welcome, everyone. I'll tell you a little story from last night. We, and I say we, myself and Councilmember Bagley, attended a neighborhood association meeting, and it was great. It was the first one that I've attended, and I'm sure him as well in his new spot. But at an event where people in the community got together. We were in Little Italy, so of course you know some of the main players that were there. We heard from a lot of neighborhood leaders, some business owners, and it was a great time. Danny found out what it's like to be out in front of the neighborhood association. You get a lot of questions, and of course you got to give a lot of answers. One lady actually had mentioned she felt a little freedom, and that's exactly right. And with that being said, let's not forget about this Thursday. It's Veterans Day. We certainly all appreciate the freedoms we have in this country for the men and women who serve, regardless of what you believe in, no matter what you talk about or want to do. It's the freedoms that the men and women we have. So this Thursday, of course, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, I know a lot of my colleagues will be at different events, and make sure you go out of your way to say thank you to a veteran. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being a veteran. Welcome. Madam Clerk.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Omaha City Council. We look forward to hearing your input on our many items today. I encourage you to turn your cell phones to mute or turn them off.
Item 6, a resolution to approve the revised preliminary plat for The Hill located northeast of 168th and State Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 6 is today. Proponents, please. Mr. Jobin.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is just a replat of kind of the northwest corner of the subdivision called The Hill, just to rezone to R4 to R5, and also to provide the plat that will allow for 4 and 6 plexes in this subdivision. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none. Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 7-0. Item 7, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Serenity Villas located at 2240 Skyline Drive. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 7 is today. We have the applicant by Zoom and maybe Mr. Dreesen as well. Come on down.
Douglas Dreesen, 10836 Old Mill Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. My colleague Trevor Veskern is also available to answer any technical questions you may have. This is a 10-lot subdivision on the west side of Skyline Drive. Presently, one house is there. Be happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Trevor's just here to answer questions then too, right?
The real deep stuff in the weeds he handles.
Okay. Any other proponents in the room? Seeing none. Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 7 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Item 8, a resolution to approve the revised preliminary plat for McGill Industrial Park with a waiver for cul-de-sac length located southwest of Blair High Road and State Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 8 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is just a revised preliminary plat to actually reduce the number of buildable lots as an industrial park on the southwest corner of Blair High Road and State. And it's also, the plat eliminates a portion of the property to accommodate another development that's kind of on the south and west side of this particular development. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 8 is approved, 7-0. Items 9 and 10 can be considered together for Woodbrook Valley, located south of 186th and Ida Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 9, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat. Item 10, a resolution to approve a request for a waiver to the present development zone boundary of the urban development element of the city's master plan.
Public hearing and vote on items 9 and 10 is today. The applicant, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. Mark Johnson, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. Here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 11, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Emmanuel Lakeside with waivers for sidewalks, roadway width, and cul-de-sac width located southeast of 177th and Francis Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 11 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, Jeff Lake, 2100 Cumberland Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. We actually have a request of you to lay this public hearing and vote over for 2 weeks. There was an item in the recommendation from the staff report that we wanted to spend a little more time with Planning and Public Works working through before we hopefully would submit a final plat on this matter in December. So that'd be a request. Certainly if it's something you didn't want to entertain today, we would be here to answer questions on the specifics as well.
Okay, thank you. Because we do have a public hearing open, we'll continue with the public hearing right now. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? I'm not going to close the public hearing, and we'll see what the council wants to do.
I'll make the motion to lay over and continue the public hearing for 2 weeks.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 12, a resolution to approve the Blackstone Square Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 3863 Farnham Street in an amount up to $515,000.
Public hearing and vote on number 12 is today. Proponents, please. Mr. Seaton.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. This TIF project is in the Blackstone District. It's located at 38th and Farnham. It involves a site that had 3 apartment buildings on it. Here's 2 of them, the third being behind them along Harney Street. There have been some fire damage. These buildings had been vacant since 2018. So the site has been cleared. And the proposal is for the new construction, of a 2-story, 11,000 square foot commercial building. There'll be 4 tenant bays, each with a patio area on the upper level. They're being designed with restaurant and dining uses in mind. The site is zoned NBD, Neighborhood Business District, which does not require on-site parking. They are constructing no on-site parking. They are, however, the developers contributing $15,000 into the Midtown Public Improvement Fund, which will go largely for streetscaping. The developer is Blackstone Real Estate, LLC, managed by Christy and Rob Sainer, I think, if I have the name right. The total project investment in the Blackstone District is about $4.5 million. They're requesting $515,000 in TIF support. This project's been reviewed and approved by the city's TIF committee and the city planning board. It's an appropriate land use for the location, complies with the goals of the city's master plan, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Excuse me. Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm opposed to that. I lived in that area for quite a few years when I was going to college. Worked cleaning the apartments and managed the apartments and lived in a basement apartment not very far from there, a block or two. And I don't think ever since then that I've ever considered that area blighted or severely blighted. There was an article in the Reader magazine today that seems to disagree with a lot of what I hear about TIF down here. They seem to know more about TIF than I do, and I think that's a shame. But there was also an article in the World Herald not real long ago about the crossroads. And as I read the two different articles and some of the other things here, I keep wondering, when people say, well, we're going to give that guy a break on the property tax at today's blighted rate for 15 or 20 years, but we'll get it back from him when he pays higher taxes 20 years from now. And nobody ever talks about, did you lower the citizens' taxes in that area? Did you give them a break for 20 years? Do all the developers that have been named in these projects, I don't know where they all come from. I've never heard most of them. Do they all stay in Omaha for the 20 years and keep the property and pay the higher taxes to pay you back? The point is, ladies and gentlemen, there is not enough information for citizens. You guys want to do what you're going to do, but there's not enough understanding of this for citizens. And if, quite frankly, if I lived in North Omaha, a lot of places, those are a lot more severely blighted than anything I lived in. But I don't hear about the projects going up there. And I have to agree with a lot of the people that live in North Omaha that something's kind of funny about that. But I'm going to give you this evidence. I presented some of that evidence last week. And this week I presented more evidence about some of the community partners that are not just partners. Not only they get some funding from these two boards, but they might also share in the profits. Now that's a ridiculous statement, I know. But I was rather shocked when I drove past the Leavenworth Cafe. And guess who's lived in there now? Together Inc. Miss Erin Fechtinger has some comments in this Reader magazine article that's not necessarily favorable to TIF. How all of a sudden did they get their offices, or whatever that is, in the old Leavenworth Cafe so quickly? I think those are questions that should be answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today?
These your glasses, sir? Partner, these yours?
Sorry.
Your specs? Yes, sir. I think the gentleman might have a point. Donnie Johnson, the Question Foundation, North Ohio Concerned Citizen Foundation. Actually, my job...
I just need your address too, sir.
My fake address or my real address?
Your real address.
4928 North 52nd Street. I'm right next to your district over there. In the meantime, that harbor down in Long Beach where I was stationed at when guarding Queen Mary, where President Trump won't let those tariffs come out, them ships gonna stay there? Well, the problem is here. ConAgra made the deal, and I was working for Governor K.R. back then.
So, sir, are you addressing number 12 about
I'm addressing what he said about those taxes. ConAgra broke their agreement. When I was working with Governor KR when she was giving a tax break, ConAgra, and they skedaddle out of here. So he might have a point. I think this gentleman here, development is good, but I also believe that development should come from North Omaha as well. What do you think about that, Mr. Fredson? I like your district. You're doing really well.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other opponents today on number 12?
Hello, Sarah Johnson, 2316 North 52nd Street. I also am opposed to this use of TIF because I think that I don't always agree with Larry, but the point is, when are we going to acknowledge that Blackstone is like pretty happening, pretty hip spot to be not blighted? I know that it has to do with the census tract. I'm just wondering if we're still using the 2010 data or when does it update? Because I think that at some point, hopefully soon, we're going to realize that that area of town does not need any more incentives. Everybody wants to build there. Everybody wants to develop. And I do think that it is gratefully not a huge TIF request, but it is still, I don't think that we need any more TIF in Blackstone. North Omaha, the next item, I know I'm not supposed to talk about it, that's a better use. North Omaha actually blighted, Blackstone not blighted. That's all, thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing's closed.
Motion approved. Second.
Roll call.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved, 7-0. Item 13, a resolution to approve the HFH NAAF 9 tax increment financing redevelopment project plan bound by Pinckney and Spalding Streets on the north, Wirt and Pratt Streets on the south, 24th Street on the east, and 29th Street on the west, in an amount up to $1 million.
Public hearing and vote on number 13 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley with the City Planning Department. Habitat NAAF 9. NAAF means neighborhood or represents neighborhood action in fact, neighborhood association. And the 9 represents that this is the 9th project that Habitat for Humanity has done and partnered with us to do, all in North Omaha. So this particular site, well, first of all, neighborhood action in fact is bounded by Binney Street on the south up to Sprigg, North Freeway, and then 24th Street. This particular project is bounded by the boundaries you see in black. So 24th Street to Wirt, Pinckney, and then they have a few, about 11 lots that are just west of the North Freeway. So this redevelopment project is an infill housing redevelopment project that will be similar to Habitat for Humanity's 3 other large community redevelopment rebuilding projects in North Omaha. Laird Street, and as you can see, Laird Street is on here. There it is. So they've had projects in that particular area around Laird and North 24th Street. Adams Park, as well as Kuntz Park, and Kuntz Park is further east here. So this is just another one of the projects that Habitat for Humanity has been engaged in helping to rebuild Omaha through single-family housing. This particular infill redevelopment site is going to contain 26 new single-family homes. Typically, Habitat is looking to serve families between 30 and 60% of the AMI. They can go up to 80%. Let me show you. So here are some elevations. The TIF eligible costs of this particular project are just over 1.4 million. A significant portion of the costs are within the site work and public improvements. Job creation is typically not a part of housing redevelopment projects, so there really isn't a focus on any job creation for this particular project. The TIF investment, as was spoken, is $1 million, and the project investment is about $6.6 million. The TIF project complies with the master plan, the community development law, and our TIF program, and the committee and planning board have given their approval. And with that, I'd ask for your approval, and I know Ed Teal is here with Habitat for Humanity as well.
Thank you. other proponents, please?
Ed Teal, Habitat for Humanity, 1701 North 24th Street. I have nothing more to add. I think it was covered quite well, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Any other proponents on number 13? Seeing none, any opponents?
Opponents, you say?
Mhm.
Opposed?
Opponents, yep.
Yes, sir. See, let me see if I can start all over here. Back when,
Just your name and address again for the record.
okay, Mr. Fredson. Donnie Johnson, North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation, and the Johnson and Question Foundation, 4928 North 52nd. Now, a lot of these folks here are unaware of some things. Alves, Mr. Zarinsky, Governor Thone, United States Senator Dave Carnes, and Hal Dobb. And as these programs we worked on many years ago, and the United Nations program where they sent me to participate in, and I went into those programs back, and Governor Kaur. So what we've seen here is some development for habitat, which is not fitting in the proper perspective, especially with our new refugees in this community. So that's what I was doing, and that's what I'm doing now. And they get kind of lost because we're lost in North Omaha because you're building houses, but where's the jobs going to come from? I've talked to Don Bacon. I said, look here, Mr. Bacon, you got to address a commercial saying you got $23 million to help North Omaha. I said, could you set $10 million of that dollars away so I can continue working with Senator Fisher? I've tried to tell Ms. Hatley, some of the things I try to tell her, it might not make any sense because they wasn't involved when Governor Thone sent me into Nigeria to investigate why Nebraska was buying so much popcorn, or they was buying so much popcorn from Nebraska. Or when Dave Carn and the United States Senate and the Congress sent me into Egypt to invest in that and bridging and building bridges. So they get lost on this international affairs. What I'm saying to you folks today, if you start looking at some programs to help us redevelop some of the baby boomers outside the community back to the rural community, which I told Don Bacon to do this, and he took the 10 million or 23 million, I don't know what he did with it. In the meantime, if he spent it the wrong way, we should take his something, because they took Brenda Council's license when she spent her money the wrong way.
Thank you. Any other opponents today on number 13? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Johnson, I just want to thank you for coming up and providing insight regarding how you feel about this project, and then also stepping up and doing your part as far as civic engagement. Habitat for Humanity, you guys have been around for a very long time, and in the area where there's, I think it's Neighborhood Action, in fact, is the neighborhood association there. You've done some other building and houses there, and I really appreciate that the community appreciate those homes that you've built. So I just want to move at this point that this is approved. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0. Item 14, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R4 district located at 5008 North 60th Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 14 is today. I believe we have the applicant by Zoom. Ms. Davis, we'll unmute you here in a minute. Okay. Your name and address, please.
Linda Davis, and the address we're talking about is 5008 North 60th Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68104.
And here to answer questions, or do you want to, anything more you want to say at this point?
Well, there's nothing more I wanted to say at this point because I think it's been approved through all the steps, but I just wanted to make sure I was here just in case there were proponents.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents today?
Opponents, I should say.
Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Yes.
All right, oh, we have one coming down here, just a minute.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm not totally opposed to whatever this is. I've worked in this field myself a few times, but why are we wasting our time if those steps have all been approved? Why don't you just rubber stamp it and don't ask us to spend time coming up here to propose or unoppose? I think that's probably the case of a lot of things. You get one hearing, the next time there's a vote, the next time there's an amendment, but maybe she let the cat out of the bag here. She's under the impression that it's all signed, sealed, and delivered.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Yes, Larry, City Council doesn't necessarily vote everything up or down. This is a very important process that we do all the time here, just to ensure that citizens like yourself and others do have a safe environment. So there is some value in the City Council meeting, and we, again, appreciate your comments and your foresight and bringing things to our attention so that we can make intelligent decisions. So I'm not trying to dissuade you from having conversations, but I just want to let you know that this process is very important to the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time.
Linda Davis, or would you have a hyphenated last name, or would you prefer that I call you Miss Davis? Okay. Ms. Davis, have you reached out to anyone in the neighborhood to let them know that you are going to have this group home?
Yes, so I initially sent out letters to all the neighborhoods that were within, I can't remember right now, it was either 300 and 600 feet of the property, because I knew the city was going to do that anyway, so I wanted to be proactive and reach out to them first, and I sent out a QR code for a Zoom conference call so that I could field any questions that any of the neighbors would have. Nobody was on the Zoom call, so I just went and proceeded to do the normal steps that I was told to do to get this approved.
Okay. As City Council representative, it was very important to the constituents in District 2 that they be engaged and that they have a say in what's happening in their neighborhoods. And so at this time, I'm going to move that we delay this for 2 weeks so that I can get a chance to visit with you as well as other residents in the area to discuss what's about to change in the area, if that's the case. So again, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's perfectly fine, but like the gentleman who just spoke, I thought that the process was to reach out to the neighborhood, which I did. The city also reached out to the neighborhood, so they had an opportunity to come to actually 2 separate meetings. And then no one showed up. So, I mean, I understand what you want to do, but if they have this process in place, why do we go through the process? And then now you say you want to reach out to the neighborhood, which I'm okay. Like I said, I'm okay with that, but I'm just trying to understand, why did we go through all the steps and then you're still going to reach out to the neighbors, which on 2 separate occasions, well, probably 3 separate occasions, they were reached out to?
The fact that no one responded to your request is somewhat concerning to me as a representative. And so I would like to take the time to ensure that everyone is okay with what changes may occur. Respectfully, I hope you understand that.
I mean, I understand what you're saying because that is your area that you represent. I guess, you know, because I came into town on 2 separate occasions because I actually live in Colorado for this whole process. And so I thought this was the last step in the process. And like I said, I reached out to them. The city reached out to them on 2 separate occasions. And so now when you say you have to reach out to them again, it just seems kind of redundant because they had ample time. And I'll try to make it in for the next one. But again, I made 2 efforts to come into the city for this process. And so that's what's kind of frustrating to me. But
All right.
trust me, I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there was a motion, was that for 2 weeks?
Yes, 2
Layover?
weeks.
And was there a second on that? I'll second it. Okay. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thanks. And Ms. Davis, I read everything that you presented, and I would suggest if it gets laid over, I think you have a great story to tell, and I would love to hear kind of a little bit more about what you're planning to do. It looks like there's going to be 6 residents, and you are, it's focusing on females who are previously incarcerated that may be struggling with maybe some disabilities. And so
Yep.
what's the length of time that they would be there? Is this like a 6 month to a year type program? I'm just interested in the program. I think it's great what you're doing, and I would have loved to hear you tell your story about what you're doing in the area.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we work with the probation department. So the time that they stay there is typically on average 84 days. But once their time is up, if the women are not ready to re-enter the community, we don't kick anyone out. And so what we do when they come into our home is we work with them one-on-one. So we do case management with them. We find out what their needs are once they leave, such as housing. When they come in, if they don't have a job, our job is to help them prepare for that job, whether it's interview skills, finding them interview outfits, those type of things. Basic resources. We have connections with different food pantries because they are required to provide their own food. If someone did not have a high school diploma, we work with different agencies to get them that GED. If they want to go to the next level, then we work with resources or organizations to get them prepared to maybe get a bachelor's degree, work with the trade school. So it is individualized because everyone's needs are going to be different. And so house managers work one-on-one with the women weekly. And we know our time is short with the city, or the state, I should say. But like I said, even if they don't finish what they need to finish prior to leaving the house, then we still work with them.
And so, and it sounds like how many of these houses have you worked with before? Is this your first one?
That I worked with before I started? How many houses did I work with before I started this one?
Yeah.
I didn't work with any houses prior. And I will tell you, when I first decided to get into this business, it was a girlfriend of mine who says, Linda, have you ever thought about starting a transition home because the need is great? I did my research and I found out the mass majority of these homes are usually geared toward men and not so much for women. And so I started the home. I've never been in a home and I've never worked for a home. So I did a lot of homework in the beginning on my own. And it was a learning process, but I think we've been very successful in what we've done. So it's a very fulfilling organization. And, I would love to share more, but even more so, I would love to have some of the women come down and share their experiences and how they have done very well before they transition back into the community.
Okay, so you have done this before. So you've had some successes with other homes or women before this one?
So let me back up. So when I had initially started my home, I will be honest with you, I did my due diligence to make sure there were no homes within 600 yards of my house because I read what the regulations were. So I didn't find any transition homes because there's a list that is with the state. So there were none. But then when I applied for the state, they said there was a group home, which is not the same kind of home that I have. This is for people who are disabled, like in wheelchairs or whatever. That was within 600 feet. Hence the reason why I had to go through this process to get to where I am, because there was another transitional home or group home within the 600 yards of my home.
Okay. And my question was, you had just said that you had women come down. So have you, these women were in a previous home that you worked for?
No. So I'm saying is I started my home, but then when I found out that there was a house within 600 yards, so we've had women that were in the house and then they've graduated from the home.
I see. So this home is already operating.
It was operating, but like I said, I wanted to do it the right way when I found out that we were within 600 yards of another house.
Okay. So how long have you been in operation?
A little over a year.
Okay. Well, and that's good, because then that means that the neighbors have been around you and worked with you.
So
They've
you
had
guys
a year.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, they get along so well. I actually encourage the woman who says she would like to talk to her constituents. She can reach out to the next door neighbors. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I wasn't aware of that, so because this just came up, I didn't know that it had been open for a year. So I think that's great. And do you live here in Omaha, or do you just hire do you hire people to run the house for you?
Yeah, so I actually live in Colorado. I have a house manager, I have a director, and then we have two, what we call them, on-site managers. So during the day, the women are required to have employment when they live in the house. So 9 times out of 10, they are at their job. But the on-site attendant is responsible just to sit in the house. So I literally pay them to sit in the house just in case, someone decides to come home and do something illegal in the house. So it's just someone to have that oversight in the house throughout the day. So the house managers are there during the night, and then the on-site managers or attendants are there during the day.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for providing a much needed service for females that are coming out of incarceration and trying to help them, get back into society with jobs and help. So thank you for answering those questions for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, that's a great story. I'm glad those questions were asked. As it relates to the layover, I previously served on the planning board, and this had to go through planning board first before it got on our agenda. And one of our litmus tests, if you will, was that there be reach out to the neighborhood to let them know what was going on with the project. And to me, as you said, Ms. Davis, you've followed all the requirements. You've made those attempts to reach out to the neighborhood to give their input. The old adage of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Just because no one showed up at the meetings you had scheduled doesn't mean that you didn't meet all those requirements, and I think satisfactorily. So I'm very supportive of what you're doing, and I hope we can vote on this today.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
I too am supportive of the initiative, but again, the documentation that was received from city planning shows that a letter went out with no sender's address on it. And then we have no one showing up at a Zoom call. So I need to do due diligence in the area to find out what the overall perception is regarding this project. And that's just me carrying out the will of the people in District 2. And that's why I'm asking that this be laid over. I also would ask Ms. Davis, understanding that this is a new business opportunity for you, as you stated that you had never done this before. This is your first new business venture. Who will I speak to when I arrive at that at the group home, since you live in Colorado?
So it depends on what time you're there. Either it will be the on-site house attendant or it will be the house manager. And then my mom is actually on the payroll as well. So she fills in, because if a house manager wants to take some time off, then she will fill in for anyone who needs some time off.
Would you mind providing some names, please?
My mom's name is Maxine Lyons. My house manager is Jessica Hoganson. Well, she's my director. Then I have Sharon Wedberg, W-E-D-B-E-R-G, and Deborah McDaniel.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. And Mr. Bagel, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. Quick question for you. You provided a letter that's in the attachments with your phone number. Did you get any phone calls from anybody?
I did not.
Okay, that's all I had. And I'm going to support the layover, just not because I don't believe in what you're doing. I, as my colleagues have shared, appreciate the effort you're making to help these young women get back on their feet. So this is just to let Councilmember Johnson be satisfied, and I know you will work with her on it, even if you live in Colorado, that you want this to succeed, and I think my colleagues and I do as well. So I appreciate your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a motion to labor for 2 weeks and a second. Roll call.
Harding. No. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. No. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-2. Item 15, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow transitional living in the GC district located at 701 South 75th Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on vote on number 15 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Zena Miller, and I'm the operational manager representing the applicant today. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. And your address?
701 South 75th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68114.
Thanks. Any other proponents here today?
Aho. Umaha Nixing Umaha Laila Jingake Ed Webster from the Omaha Nation in Macy, Nebraska. 100 Omaha Way. I stand here today. I'm honored to be here. We are endeavoring to create 2 halfway houses that are Native American focus on the Omaha Nation and in Winnebago, Nebraska. We support Ms. Miller as she has supported our efforts to teach us, show us how to do the halfway house transitional living facility. We have a great need on our homelands, and we support her efforts. I myself have served twice on the Omaha Nation Tribal Council, so I know your position very well, Ms. Johnson. You always have questions. You always want to have every part of it available for people to consider, and so I appreciate that. I also want to say that I have 6 brothers and 4 sisters, and thank you for recognizing November 11th. Out of our family, we had 7 children who went to Iraq, and they made it home. And so today, our warriors, Umaha Nixing Umaha Laila, Umaha Helushka Ati, you know, Wakanda Kega Laila. God blessed our warriors. And so I want to thank you for that, for recognizing, you know, our veterans. I just want to say in closing, in 1837, we were located, we had a village where Fort Omaha currently resides today. And a gentleman came in there. He was a military general with the last name Crook. And they camped by us, and during that time, we befriended them, we fed them, we helped them, we kept them. And so this great city, incorporated in 1857, our last treaty was 1854 with the United States government, Treaty for Peace. And because of that, we gave up 6 million acres at that time, and we're located in northeast Nebraska. So a little bit about what we're trying to do, and a little bit about how, out of all the people that we talked to, it was a black lady who stepped up and said, "We'll help you." So I'm thankful for that. So anyway, we stand in support, of this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the service of your family. Any other proponents on number 15 today?
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. Before you move on to the rest of your agenda, I did want to point out that a lot of these processes that you deal with are outlined in state statute, the city charter, and city codes. And it's not just in the Open Meetings Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents today?
Donnie Johnson, North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation, the Johnson and Question Foundation, 4407 North 52nd Street. I was thinking here about the previous agenda, and Maxine Water and Betty Abbott, who was on this city council, who sponsored me, and Al Bays, who's the mayor, who sponsored me to go out to this area of the community to come back and provide some things for this community. So I support things like this, but at the same time, we still need some things to be looked into as far as jobs. Marty Schubert, he said, we need to replace those meatpacking plants. But then I'm not so sure about the Colorado lady and Maxine Water and their programs in this area. So I would be having some questions as well. But at the same time, I will support this, but one other thing, Mr. Rickett, he has already said he wants to build a new penitentiary, but the taxpayers said they're not gonna put up no money for no penitentiary. So what are we gonna do? Fix the old one, or build a new one, or start moving people outside the city? I tell Mr. Rickett, you're not gonna be the governor no more, so therefore, the city council of Omaha is gonna decide. Never mind.
Thank you. Any other proponents on number 15? Any opponents?
Larry Storer, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, 68132. I'm not totally opposed, but I do not know what kind of transitional living you're talking about. I do not know that neighborhood. It sounds like it's maybe commercial, and it's maybe needed. But I go to both of our government bodies every week, and I hear about all these wonderful, fantastic programs that people come walking down the aisle asking for money for. But we never hear of the results. We don't know the details before we get to vote on this today. Today is the only time we get a chance to vote. It's bam, bam, slam, damn, thank you, ma'am. You read it, we're not here when you read it. The second time you read it and there's a vote. The third time, it's out of our hands. My only chance to find out what this is and to vote for or against it is to try to force the issue, excuse me. Transitional living for who, for what reason? You heard in the last discussion, the Zoom call, and even right now, there's a lot of confusion over the lack of prisons, the high numbers in the new Douglas County Juvenile Center are still high. But we're sending them home for all these programs. Why are those programs not successful? You need to ask more questions. You have to answer questions for the citizens. What group of people is this for? I really don't care if it's for Indians or not. I might have a little bit of Indian blood in me. I might have a little bit of black blood in me. I'm not lying about that. I just don't know the actual facts. What I'm talking about is the lack of transparency from the people that run it. Did you ask a lot of questions of that lady that's in Colorado? Did you all ask the citizens that live by that house? Did you ask the citizens that live by the church on 50th and Ames or close to 50th on Grand Avenue? No, you may put a notice in the paper or in the recorder and wait a couple of weeks, nobody responds, so you go ahead and vote. That's not really canvassing the neighborhood. How many people know what Zoom is? How many people actually have the capability of doing Zoom? You have really no idea how many people in the neighborhood may be against it. But because they didn't hear about it, they're out of luck if they weren't here today. And that's one of the problems.
Thank you. Any other opponents on number 15? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Begley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a special permit that we're voting on today. And in spite of what was said here, I know it's gone through the planning board. There's been discussions with staff, amongst colleagues, and we just don't show up here and make a vote without knowing what we're voting on. So that's the comments that I'll make to people that are listening today. And in reading this, this home is going to care for people that are struggling with drug and alcohol abuse. And as any common sense person knows, in our community, in our country, with the pandemic that's gone on in the last year and a half, that has greatly affected so many more people that it's touching their lives in a traumatic way oftentimes. And when something comes before our body that we can help people with a special permit, there's a mental health therapist, there's case managers, there's caregivers for people that need help with addiction. And I would be confident to probably say that everybody in this room and that's listening today is touched by somebody that has a chemical dependency abuse issue. So I will be making a motion to absolutely support this. And I wish, like most people, prayers and our best wishes to the people that are the caregivers here and the souls that are going through this program. I wish nothing but the best, and I'll be, again, making a motion to support this today. Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you. Motion a second. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Thank you. I was going to second that as
I'm
well. No, yeah. Go ahead, steal the show breaker. But I just wanted to note, especially with those comments, that we just have no idea what we're doing. We just see an agenda item and all we get is the 3 sentences maybe on the agenda item. There's 23 pages attached to the agenda item. Those pages are available in paper copy in our office. They're available online. You just click it, and those 23 pages detail exactly what is going to be happening here. It defines transitional living. It talks about the number of people. It talks about the staff. It talks about how many managers there will be, a mental health therapist, operations manager. It gives the hours. It talks about drug and alcohol treatment programs for the residents. It actually details everything about it, all the way down to parking, parking stalls, what's recommended by the city. It goes through their operating characteristics, talks about the building design, talks about the site development, the height, the scale, land use. I mean, 23 pages of detail in regards to what this special use permit application is all about. So, and it's not written in legalese. It's in real plain English. So if you ever want to know anything, this is what we read every day. We don't just read, or every week. We don't just read the paragraph. We then open up the attachments, and that's what explains everything to you. So for members of the public, if you want that detail, it is available to you online. And again, it's available in hard copy in our offices. You can always contact somebody from our office if you're having any trouble getting the information, but it's all available and all there. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0. Item 16, to consider a Class C liquor license for Sebastian Southern Crab, located at 843 North 98th Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 16 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. Angela Schmidt of Schmidt Law Firm on behalf of Gunnels and Burton LLC, doing business as Sebastian Southern Crab, located at 843 North 98th Street. I'm here if there are any questions on this application. I would also just note that this location was previously a restaurant beforehand with a liquor license, but it had been more than 2 years since that was active. So that's why it's noted as a new location and a new application. But if there are any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearing on agenda items number 17 through 25 were held on November 2nd. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 26 through 44 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. And I'll note that we have the applicant on number 26 by Zoom available if City Council needs it. Any proponents on these items? Any opponents?
I'm going to be speaking as an opponent of item number 29. This is a change order with Swain Construction in the amount of my name is Mark Brannon, 6915 Evans Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68104, speaking on my own behalf.
Thanks.
It's a change order with Swain Construction for $184,000. This is another one of those unique change orders we saw, I think, last week or a couple weeks ago, that Public Works described that one project was completed, and so they were able to add more scope to the work. And this is another one of those, Ms. Melton, I'm sure you've read all the attachments. You know where the project was done and where they're moving to, so you won't have to ask Public Works. But it is in a different part of town, which is why, again, if you've opened the attachment, you know we are paying them a mobilization fee to move from here to there, even though in the original contract, we paid a demobilization fee for them to demobilize from the area that they're currently at. So my real issue with this is that in last year, Swain Construction was cited by the Environmental Protection Agency. And again, I'm sure you guys are all well aware of that, considering that I think 5 out of 7, if not 6 out of 7 of you have received significant financial contributions from Swain Construction as well as Linda Swain. in the settlement documents, EPA alleges that Swain Construction used mechanized equipment to move concrete rubble, construction debris, and other pollutants into Thomas Creek and Little Papillion Creek, impacting approximately 1,300 feet of stream channel. 2 EPA inspections at the company's facility in 2019 confirmed these unauthorized activities, and this was after originally the U.S. Corps of Engineers discovered the violation, ordered a cease and desist order, but subsequently found that that was not complied with, and so the EPA stepped in. Both streams are designated as impaired by the state of Nebraska. Waters are assessed as impaired when an applicable water quality standard is not being attained. In addition to paying the penalty, it was a $150,000 fine that the company, it was originally $250,000. The company said they couldn't pay the full fine. It was reduced to $150,000. But they also agreed to restore the impacted stream stretches and install facility controls to minimize or eliminate further discharges. I sincerely hope that each one of you has received, along with the substantial campaign contributions, assurances that there are controls on site to make sure that this doesn't occur again. I myself contacted Ben Washburn of the EPA down in Kansas. He was not able to confirm one way or the other. Again, I only contacted him this morning as I was reviewing the agenda before I went to go plant my garlic. But I hope that perhaps some of you have reached out to the EPA or visited the site, which, Mr. Festerson, you should be very concerned. This is directly adjacent to the creek, whereas you know all the way back, I think in 2019, proposed in the CIP that to connect the recently completed trails. Parks Department, Mount Kalasvich, you guys have done a great job up there. I commend you on all your work up there. Beautiful new park up there, and that's going to be connected to the trail to the Keystone Trail at Democracy Park, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that runs right along a huge pile of rubble. Now you can check with the EPA, you can check with Ms. Melton, your largest campaign donor, but I drive by that and I know that the controls are not in place. So I hope you don't approve this, and I hope that we start taking environmental protection seriously in Omaha, and I hope you guys start taking accountability for who you're taking money from and their actions. I'll take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other opponents today on these items? Seeing none, public hearings closed. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to note items 32, 33, 34, and 35 all deal with emergency services, housing services, and emergency shelters. And coming into November and Thanksgiving and the holiday season, I just want to remind people of that fact, and that if you have a little extra to give this year, we would encourage you to do so, because these are needed services for our citizens, and hope that we can all be in the giving spirit if we can afford to be. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights? Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 45, an ordinance to acquire private property for the 72nd and D Street grading, paving, walls, bridge, and erosion control project.
Public hearing on number 45 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 46, an ordinance to approve the bid from Polydine Inc. to purchase liquid sludge dewatering polymer for an annual estimated cost of $337,200 for a 3-year term.
Public hearing on number 46 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 47, an ordinance to approve a professional services agreement with Tina Jenham in the amount of $27,920 and to authorize funding for such agreement from the fiscal year 2019 Project Safe Neighborhoods Grant.
Public hearing on number 47 is today. Proponents, please.
Amber Parker, City of Omaha Mayor's Office, 1819 Farnham Street, here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 48, an ordinance to approve an interlocal agreement with the University of Nebraska to reimburse for the costs associated with the University of Nebraska Medical Center Campus Expansion Project.
Public hearing on number 48 is today. Proponents, please. Mr. Anderson.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. Kevin Anderson, City of Omaha Mayor's Office, here today in support of an extremely exciting partnership with the University of Nebraska Med Center. In front of you today is a interlocal agreement with the Med Center, as noted, to support their campus development plans. Detailed within that agreement are two separate but very interrelated projects, significant projects that are going to shape the future of the medical center campus, City of Omaha and greater metropolitan region, as well as the state of Nebraska. That's kind of the extent of scale and scope of the projects we're talking about here today. Noted in that, are two significant projects that have been well publicized at this point. The first and most notable being the federal Project Next, an approximate $2.5 billion project proposal for a federal hospital associated with budget items relating to numerous federal agencies led by the Department of Defense, as well as the development of the former steel casting site or Saddle Creek development site you'll hear about today. These two projects warrant the partnership with a number of local entities, including State of Nebraska Philanthropic Community and the City of Omaha. So I'll lay out the proposed contribution or partnership from the City of Omaha, starting with the federal project. But first, I will start with the why. As you can see, in a economic impact study based off of the project proposal, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in terms of level investment and total economic impact, not only for the City of Omaha, but the state of Nebraska. Again, approximate $2.5 billion investment of multiple funding sources led by Federal Department of Defense, estimated to create 41,000 total jobs, over an approximate 8,700 of those being permanent jobs here within the City of Omaha. And just a massive amount of total economic impact with total state tax revenues exceeding $200 million annually. But as proposed, that project is to be supported by $45 million in total over a course of approximate 10 years via the collection of cigarette and vaping product occupation tax, as I mentioned, to the tune of $450,000 per year over the course of 10 years. Check my math there, $4.5 million per year over the course of 10 years relating to that. That is a kind of a direct pass-through of that cigarette occupation tax. Built into that is a fee to come back to the City of Omaha to pay for the total collection of that tax. That tax has previously been authorized in an agreement with the University of Nebraska Med Center in similar partnership with the creation of the Scott Center for Cancer Research and Treatment in that facility. So not a new endeavor by any means, but this is a good opportunity. One of the important things to note of that proposed contribution is that is in direct tie to the commencement of construction of the federal project. So I know there's some previous questions on the status of the federal project and the relationship of the city's commitment towards the project in its whole. But the way this agreement is written and will be implemented is that $4.5 million annually is solely for the reimbursement of eligible expense, which directly equates to the expenses associated with the design and construction of a hospital facility and physical hospital. So until that construction process commences, those dollars essentially are not obligated to the medical center, and only when construction commencements are those eligible expenses of design and construction reimbursable back to the University of Nebraska Medical Center. The other portions of the total partnership and city contribution towards the project relate to the Saddle Creek development or West Campus development expansion of the medical center. And I say they're interrelated because there's a lot of interrelated layers associated with this development. In its own right, the medical center has facility needs for an administrative building and an opportunity for the redevelopment of the Voigtman building here a little bit to the south of where that's proposed, with the administrative tower being at the northern portion of the wedge here created by the Saddle Creek frontage. But what the reallocation of some of the spaces from main campus to make way for the federal hospital clears that site in a sense and pulls a lot of those administrative needs to the new office tower, allowing for the utilization of that space for the ultimate federal project. Have renderings of the administrative tower, approximate 350,000 square foot facility on top of a parking deck, which relates directly to another portion of the city's contribution towards the project, and that equates to up to $30 million in support of a parking structure that will be owned and operated by the city of Omaha, utilizing our parking enterprise fund and lease purchase bonds paid for by the use of revenues generated by that enterprise fund, to the tune of anywhere between an approximate 1,200 spaces in support of the administrative tower, but in the use of these funds and laid out in the interlocal agreement is the fact that all of these facilities in the commitment, whether it be this vertical infrastructure or the horizontal transportation infrastructure, is in support of the entire campus-wide development plans for the University of Nebraska Med Center. So while we work through the details and especially work through a campus-wide parking needs study, is where this potential parking deck could expand, but it's going to be solely based off of findings of a market rate parking study that will be conducted by the city to ensure that we are right-sizing any type of parking needs and parking infrastructure that's going to support not only the administrative tower and adjacent facilities on the Saddle Creek development site, but also for campus-wide uses as well, which also reflects to the other portion of the city's commitment, which is $18 million of transportation bond funding directly related to reimburse the medical center for the construction of lateral roadway infrastructure as laid out in this map, in a total of 4 independent but related phasing associated with those improvements. It is important to note that those $18 million of future transportation bonds are currently programmed in our capital improvement plan, again, to reimburse the medical center for the construction and construction to city specifications relating to these roadway designs. So while, again, this is on the Saddle Creek site, it's being done with the appropriate traffic demands in mind to support the entire campus use and any traffic impact related to not only the Saddle Creek development, but the proposed federal hospital project as well. So once again, kind of to reiterate, it's a total of $93 million worth of city contribution, but the way that it's phased and structured and paid over time, which makes us as a city extremely comfortable with the level of commitment based off of the funding sources, $45 million associated with the extension of cigarette occupation tax, $18 million of transportation bond funds that are currently programmed in our capital improvement plan, and up to $30 million of parking structure which will be related directly to our parking enterprise fund, which is also laid out in the capital improvement plan. That being said, I will be happy to make myself available for any questions. Also with me from the city is Jennifer Taylor, City Attorney's Office, Steve Curtis, City Finance Office, and from the development team in University of Nebraska Medical Center, Brian Spencer, the Director of Campus Facilities and Planning, as well as Doug Ewald, who I believe now would be Vice Chancellor Emeritus of Business and Finance, as well as Lucas Weatherly, engineer from Olson Associates.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents that want to speak?
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. This is going to be a continued effort by UNMC and your previous interlocal agreements with the university. I want to add on the infrastructure, though, is that maybe this is a good reason to make the bike lane on Harney Street permanent, maybe even extending it all the way to the campus. The bike lane. It's not permanent right now, it's temporary. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents?
Donnie Johnson, North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation, and Johnson Equestrian Foundation, 4407 North 52nd Street. Now, where I was giving these names earlier about all the politicians and the governing bodies of this city back in the 80s sent me out to do all this research. Ebola, swine flu, COVID-19. I'm saying to myself, I support this project, but we want them to also consider this. Set aside $10 million for North Omaha because we're not having any success. We see a lot of development going on in UMC, but can we also say, look, there's some problems in North Omaha. We need to deal with those. Now, I'm not having any problem with the UMC doing their projects. I'm just saying that at this time, the governing bodies, going back to the 70s and the 80s, when I was only a 24-year-old young guy, trying to get on the city council, they say, you're not wise enough yet, Johnson. We want you to go to the United Nations, Senator Zarinsky told me, and study there. So what I'm bringing to you is data that I have done over the years. Now we need more information on this medical marijuana. We want money for that because they're gonna pass it. So if the UMC is gonna get a lot of money, we need jobs in North Omaha. Some kind of way or somewhere, we have to find some jobs. And if the UMC is gonna create those jobs for the, professionals, what about the blue collars or the ones beneath that? What would be blue collars and them other ones? There's so many tasks that I'm working on, but in the meantime, we're still having a problem with jobs. That's why we've been telling Don Bacon, Senator Fisher, let some of the baby boomers move on the outskirts of the city. So I'm trying to sneak this in on all these other projects that you guys got going on, because I've written Ben Gray. That's probably why he's not here no more, but he's a nice young man. I'm going to support you, Ms. Johnson. But in the meantime, I got to go back to the federal government, walk the streets, and work with all these new refugees and say, look, this is a great community. And I know you guys like being here, but at the same time, we still need jobs, especially the baby boomers. So the infrastructure at UMC and all that development, great. But would you please set something aside in case the government of the state of Nebraska and that unicameral and Senator Chambers stop suing God and we pass the medical marijuana law? I don't know.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Hello again, Sarah Johnson, 2316 North 52nd Street. I am not against UNMC's expansion, of course. They've done so much great for the community. I don't think anyone can really argue against that. What I'm particularly upset about is the $30 million in parking. That is for approximately 1,200 stalls. That is about $224 per stall per month over the course of its lifetime. We cannot justify $3 million. I'm sure you've all seen, I don't know, you've probably seen this study here, but we were talking about things in the CIP, and what we're trying to incentivize here. If we're building $30 million worth of parking garages, but we can't build $3 million worth of a bike lane, again, thank you for trying. Thank you, Councilor Rowe, for riding it with me yesterday. I appreciate you getting out there. I appreciate you getting down there and seeing it. We have to get real about the climate situation. I was super grateful to see that Omaha's finally on board with the climate action plan. I think we hopefully can all agree we're past time to be getting real about that. I brought a study, which I'll email all of you as well. This is a study from 2010. Omaha tends to be about 10 years behind the times, so I thought that it would be fun to bring up a study from 2010 talking about there's no such thing as free parking. It's a nationwide study talking about the environmental costs of parking garages. I'm not going to share all of it with you today. I'll email it to you. We'll pull a few quotes. Again, just not against the project in general, against us spending $30 million for 1,200 parking stalls. The environmental effects of parking are not just from encouraging the use of the automobile over public transit or walking and biking, the group stated in their paper, but also from activities related to building and maintaining the infrastructure. So UNMC is right on Dodge. We're talking about TOD, transit-oriented development, and yet we're going to spend $30 million building parking on that corridor. When people are asking me, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Mode Shift Omaha. I'm here wearing my car shirt from my dad in the 70s as Sarah Johnson. People ask all the time, why aren't there people on the buses? Because we incentivize people driving everywhere, easily. Free parking, just ridiculous quantities of parking every which way you go. So if we are going to continue to prioritize and spend $30 million on a parking garage for 1,200 stalls at UNMC, we're doing it wrong. I just don't understand, like, at what point are we going to get real about some of these environmental impacts? And again, I'm grateful that Omaha is finally coming to terms with the fact that we have to do something about it, but we need to start doing something about it 10 years ago. This parking study from 10 years ago already knows, we're doing a parking study now to see like how many more parking spots we need to put. Sure, there will always be a need for parking. There's already a lot of parking at that facility. Maybe a little bit more makes sense, but $30 million is too much parking when we can't even justify $3 million for the first and only protected pilot lane on Harney Street. I think it's just really upsetting. The Med Center, is a great leader in a lot of ways. They actually have aggressive sustainability goals, which this flies in the face of. We already talked about how just expensive it is to build and maintain, but they did a really good job with their Travel Smart program. I'm sure y'all are familiar with that. But what they did was by incentivizing different forms of transportation with free bus passes, carpool parking, emergency ride homes, bicycle parking, they actually doubled the number of staff coming to campus in ways other than driving. So if you build it, they will come. Like, that's all I'm trying to get across to y'all is, like, if we continue to build for cars, we're going to get more cars. We understand as a community that that is damaging the environment. I just sound like a broken record. I'm glad you're not voting on it today. I'm going to send you, I could even send you a book called The High Cost of Free Parking by a guy named Donald Shoup. He has a lot of really great points that show that it's just really not what we need to be doing. When we add more parking, we continue to encourage people using their cars. So if we want to actually get real about this and encourage people getting to campus in alternative, healthier ways, we really just need to get real about this. So I don't know. Again, I sound like a broken record. Appreciate you taking the time to actually look into this. There is some good stuff happening with some bike lanes and that sort of thing. Like, I think that this is going to be a great project. I'm sure it'll go forward. I just think we need to be really critical of $30 million in a TOD development. Like, that's. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Mr. Anderson, did you want to? I do have a question for you, so I'll recognize you first if you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to respond because Ms. Johnson brings up some excellent points. I think what's worth noting are a couple of things. First and foremost, she's absolutely correct. The medical center has been kind of on the forefront and a great community leader as it relates to multimodal transportation, parking practices as well. Travel Smart has been a fantastic success for not only the center, but also a great guide as we look at these multimodal opportunities. And what they're doing is a really great job of connecting their campus with multimodal opportunities. What's depicted here is a potential overpass over Leavenworth that's going to directly connect campus seamlessly to the Field Club Trail, one of our more popular trails for multimodal commuting as well. But it's worth noting, Ms. Johnson brought up, the high price of free parking, and she's absolutely right. It's a great, fantastic book, and it's a great model. But it's worth noting, we're looking at a $30 million parking structure to support anywhere from very aggressively 2,000 stalls, but likely closer to the 1,200 that's anticipated. That's to support 8,000 new permanent jobs for the development of the campus. If we convince half of those new employees that they should be taking multimodal, this garage still wouldn't support the remaining half of commuters coming into the Med Center every day. And so this is where we feel confident on the investment of that up to $30 million amount, on the basis that we think there's a big demand for parking today, even despite the success of the UNMC's Travel Smart program. But we're looking to add 8,000 plus new jobs to this facility in a fairly dense environment. So, but even best case scenario, we know where there's going to be a tremendous parking demand that's associated with this project, even if we go gangbusters and have astounding success on pushing multimodal transportation as well. So,
thank you. Thanks for addressing that. And then I did want to have one follow-up question with you too. So what's conceived here, of course, is a massive project and one that would have a massive impact on our economy. $1.4 billion annually upon completion, it estimates, and about 8,700 new jobs. And key to the whole prospect, I think, is the Department of Defense appropriation, which I know the applicant feels positive about and is working on, but may not know for another 6 months or so, it sounds like, it, upon that congressional action and upon that getting awarded. The state is also a partner here, of course, in this project, and I think has committed $300 million should that federal appropriation of about $1 billion come through, and should the applicant also be successful raising $300 million. And so now the city's being proposed as a partner as well to complete the picture. And most of these things you described in your remarks and in this interlocal agreement have already been approved in the city's capital improvement plan, like you explained. But the one new thing that you did dwell upon is the tobacco tax, and how that would be committed from 2023 for at least 10 years for the $4.5 million you described, up to that amount. So that is the one new thing I just wanted to talk through with you. You did, and you did say this, I think, but I just wanted to confirm it on the record, that the understanding is that that is only committed if Project Next happens as described in this document. So the $1 billion appropriation, the massive project that happens, and then therefore the city is a partner with that tobacco tax. But absent that not happening, that tobacco tax is not committed to this project, right?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, that $45 million is directly tied via the interlocal agreement to the commencement of construction of the scoped federal project. So I think even beyond the state, we're not tying directly to funding sources, but construction actually has to start before the city then reimburses eligible expenses associated with the hospital project.
And not just a hospital, but Project Next, as has been
yes,
described,
correct,
right?
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's important to delineate, because I think that is what the document says, but it's not quite as explicit as what the state did. But I think we have the same posture as a partner and the same expectations as a partner. But if for some reason the federal grant wouldn't come through, I think it will, and I hope it does. But should it not, that's a massive source of funding for the city too that would otherwise go to the general fund, right?
Yes, though it's worth noting we're equally restricted by the eligible use by ordinance of those collected taxes. Public health, hospital systems, hospital facilities are an eligible use of that. So I think that between what the language of the interlocal agreement and the restrictions of the ordinance itself, the collection of and use of the occupation tax tied to cigarette and vaping uses is where we feel comfortable with the level of commitment towards the project.
Thank you. And I believe that's the understanding of the Med Center too. I don't know if you want to, Doug, if you wanted to come down just for a minute and confirm your understanding of that, or anything else you'd like to add about the project.
Doug Ewald, Vice Chancellor of Business Finance, Business Development. I guess it would be emeritus now.
And your address too, just for the.
Exactly. 309 South 182nd Street, Elkhorn 68022. And your point is correct, President Festerson. And I'm a big believer in this. It's a but-for test, basically. But for this, there's certain things that have to be done. We have to have the federal commitment to this project at the levels indicated. And if that happens, it invokes certain provisions within this interlocal agreement. Likewise, with the state, the $300 million with the state requires $300 million of private donations.
Thank you. And congratulations on the new job, too.
Well, I think.
No further lights? Madam Clerk?
Non-action items, items 49 through 73, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Second, roll call.
Harding. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Yes. Bagley. Aye. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 3:30.